Hello everyone, and welcome to this series, which may be a series depending on how frequently I do this, potentially called Letterboxd Logs. I actually tried doing this series like way years back, but hey, this time maybe I'll follow through on it and be satisfied with the results. Oh well. So before I start, if you haven't seen my video on forgotten found footage, check it out. Even though you probably are watching, if you're watching this, you're probably familiar with my stuff anyway. So also, I have completed the research phase for what I think will be my next project, so stay tuned for that. I've been a bit slow this month because for Christmas I got a pen display, so I've been chiseling my art skills quite a lot recently. But anyways, how about we go into what this series is about, which is me talking about the movies I've seen last month. And so, let's get right to it. Now, starting this month, actually this year, January 2025, I started it by watching Thunderpants, a movie about this kid who is born with a flatulence problem. A kid who's always farting, and his father leaves him because he farts a whole lot and it smells. Yeah, that's how I started my year. That's the first movie I saw this year. It's a British movie that, despite the absurd premise, is quite watchable and entertaining too. One thing that's kind of surprised me is I expected a kind of cheapo movie. Well, maybe not expected, but I think that I think from the concept you would expect a cheap direct-to-TV or somewhat kids movie. But I'm pretty sure this was theatrical, and also, surprisingly, it has a pretty strong production value to it. It's not a cheapo movie. Like, for example, it has a vision and that it has a consistent style, almost Burton-esque. It reminded me of City of Lost Children, this artistic French film. It had a lot of green in it, where he'll go through a town and all the doors will be green. In his class, everyone has green uniforms, and so green is the color this film is drenched in, because farts are green, as everyone knows. And the movie was, like I said, it was pretty watchable, as there were, of course, there's a lot of fart gags, but it's more than just, he farted. It's about the absurdity. Like, his friend is an inventor who invents pants that swell up with his farts and inflate. Describing this. And so it's more about the absurdity of stuff. Like, he makes a hovercraft powered by his farts and stuff. And it's more, yeah, you could simplify it to fart gags, but the absurdity of it does carry it, and it is quite entertaining. Although, and I don't know if this is spoiling it, it's at the very end. It's in every trailer. So I'll say, if you consider this spoilers, whatever, it's in the trailer. He is sought out by NASA to propel a rocket ship with his farts in order to rescue some people stranded on a space station. And at that point, there's not really much of a conflict there. He just has to, well, do what he's been doing, fart on a spaceship, on a rocket. It's not like there's a choice he has to make, so there isn't much of a compelling climax per se. But for the story it tries to tell, it's better than what you would probably expect. It's quite, it was pretty entertaining. Next up is a classic, National Lampoon's Vacation, starring Chevy Chase. If you're unfamiliar with this movie, it's about this father, Clark Griswold, who has this idea to take his family on a vacation to Wally World, aka that equivalent to Disney World. And of course, it doesn't go his way. Along his trip, there are several inconveniences, and it's a road trip movie with his family. And one thing I didn't know is that this one is rated R. I had first seen National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which is PG-13, so so this goes harder than that one, and it quite surprised me, but it's only funnier because, well, you want it to go hard when the father rages, when Clark gets enraged, especially later on. Now, it's hard for me to describe what this movie does well per se. I often review horror movies, so I'm not that adept in criticizing comedy per se. I guess the most I can say is watch it and, well, you'll find yourself laughing. The family, especially Clark Griswold, is a huge character that I love seeing his frustration bubble. In both this and Christmas Vacation, which I watched again the last Christmas, and it was my girlfriend's first time watching it, which I watched most of these movies with my girlfriend. And so that watching Christmas Vacation is what got us on what you will find to be this Chevy Chase, John Hughes binge we did for the month. And National Lampoon Vacation, it's the best in the series. We watched pretty much all the vacation movies, and I guess all I can say is if the poster alone makes you laugh that hard, the movie is well worth it. He gets himself into quite some funny situations, funnier than the sequel, National Lampoon's European Vacation. Now, I don't want to give praise through negativity. I feel like it's almost backhanded in a way, because if a movie is good, it should stand alone. Its goodness is self-evident, and I think National Lampoon's Vacation is that. But watching the series made me only appreciate what it did right more. So, even though I don't really like doing this, I'm going to say what it did right compared to European Vacation. Now, European Vacation's plot is that the Griswold family wins a game show and gets a European vacation. So, National Lampoon's Vacation, but in Europe, visiting stuff like the Eiffel Tower and whatnot. You know, it's what you would expect from the premise alone. You just, you get that. But it's rated down. It's not R, it's PG-13. And there were some jokes that really showed. Like one where Clark knocks a dog off the Eiffel Tower, and it's like, oh, what? But the dog, it's almost like a cartoon. Not only the dog catches this beret like a frisbee, oh, and they have to show he landed in water, that he's fine. Because you don't want the audience really stressing about that. It felt really softened for PG-13 when the original movie hit hard, but it didn't rely too much on hitting that R rating. It knew to save Clark's outburst, his cursing fits, and some of the more crazier moments. It knew to save them for the right time, so those jokes still hit hard in the original National Lampoon Vacation. There, I gave a compliment to I got complimented, even if I led into it through negativity. I'm not that adept in comedy critiquing. But National Lampoon's Vacation, I will say another issue is, in the original, Clark Griswold is a character. He's over the top. He's trying to provide his family the greatest vacation in the original by by any means necessary, and he pretty much ends up pulling his hair out because of it. So you still get some crazed moments here in European Vacation, like one where he's in Germany doing this little slap dance where they're slapping people, and he takes offense to it and just punches them. And this is where I think European Vacation does not get it, because the town bells start ringing and Russ is trying to date a girl. Oh yeah, Russ and the daughter have quite some have a plot line in this, which is pretty much their love life, and they're uninteresting and boring, and it's not funny part of the movie. I will say European... Oh, I need to stop saying I will say. Of course I will say. I'm saying it. Well, that's one phrase I need to X out of my impromptu dialogue. European Vacation is not funny. It goes through... There's this bit in Britain, and my girlfriend's British, where it goes through the stereotypes of, oh, driving on the wrong side of the road. Uh-oh, here's the loopy round on the road. And we were calling every joke. So, and it's like, oh, okay, we predicted the joke, the next one. And it's the same joke. European Vacation really drags, and what's worse, it drags longer because you can see the gags a mile coming. But okay, what about the story or anything? One thing I liked about the first one is that it didn't enter the cliche of marriage crisis. The family was still tense. It was still... going to Wally World in the first one was still a tense journey. But here, there's this bit where the wife, a scandalous tape of her ends up in the hands of someone in Europe, and it's printed on tape, and so she's mad at Clark, and rightfully so. But a second later, just like a minute later, she's like, oh no, actually he's alright. And then it enters a contrived kidnapping plot just for the climax, a really grasping at straws ass pull for the climax, really unwarranted, let alone that she forgives Clark before the climax. Not that she should have to... Okay, I'm glad they didn't have Clark save her to earn her affection back, because that would be really bad writing, because you can't have a relationship founded on this circumstantial event. You can't have them reunite because of this circumstantialness. So on the one hand, I like her realizing, okay, I like him before, but it's just too soon. Not to mention, it nullifies some of the weight of the contrived climax. Oh well, I was not a fan of European Vacation. I was surprisingly more a fan of Vegas Vacation, which once again aged down the rating from PG-13 to just PG. And I'm not against it being PG-13 per se, because I think John Hughes proved the comedy can work in Christmas Vacation, which is also PG-13. And kind of like the first one, they know to save those hard bits for just the right time. So it's not a matter... The rating isn't the end all. John Hughes proved it can work in Christmas Vacation. European Vacation just couldn't do it. Vegas Vacation takes place some years after, when his kids are more grown up and they decide to go to Las Vegas. So it's more focused in that it's not, oh, this set piece, this set piece, this set piece. It's a more focused narrative, but one that I'm not too fond of. And I'll just jump right into near the end, because I probably should be going through these a bit faster. One of the main problems is Clark leaves his family to gamble a lot, and the wife calls him out on it, and it's supposed to be, this is Clark's problem. You called your family here, but you left them just to gamble. But it's not all him, really, because his kids also just depart from the family. They also just leave the mom and leave the dad on their own accord. The running plot is that Russ, the son, is actually really lucky. He's a great gambler, and the girl is getting into, well, she's more mature. The daughter is doing, getting into strip dances, I'll say, cutting to the chase, and the Chevy chase, and I don't like that conflict for Clark, because why would he want to leave his family? The gag up until now is that he's been way too devoted to his family that it ruins his health, and especially the best ones, Christmas Vacation and the first Vacation. It's about that he's too devoted to his family that it drives him crazy. He has to make this trip to Wally World work. Despite all the hitches, he has to keep going. He has to have that family vacation, that American ideal of, fatherhood and stuff like that, by hosting this vacation. And in Christmas Vacation, there's a bit where he's like, "Oh, Dad, I don't know how you did this. You made Christmas, all these Christmas gatherings work out really well." So it's about him trying to maintain that role in family. He is that devoted to that role. Why would he abandon his kids for gambling? I saw a lot of potential in this plot because his kids are older, and by taking them to Vegas, it's like celebrating their age in a way, but which is kind of true of parenthood. You want to celebrate them maturing, but not too much, because you want to still feel like a parent. I thought that's where the plot was going to go, and it should have been about Clark having to accept that his family, his children are growing up, but that even if they leave to do their little stuff in Vegas, they won't leave him. They'll still be a family. That's where the plot should have been. But no, it's about Clark being the problem, even though his kids do the same thing. It's to fit the typical narrative of the main character has to do this and undergo an arc. And even though I enjoyed the jokes in this one more than European Vacation, there's still not some good ones. It gets too sappy and cliche. I miss the jaded edge Hughes had in National Lampoon Vacation and Christmas Vacation. That tone, for the most part, is gone in this movie. Although, one thing that I did like about it, to give it another compliment, is I like that Cousin Eddie helps out Clark after Clark had tried to help him out in Christmas Vacation. I liked what it did for Cousin Eddie. Oh boy, which shouldn't that be fun? That's the next vacation movie. That's the one I didn't watch with my girlfriend. I get to say for next Christmas, the direct-to-DVD Cousin Eddie's Vacation Island. Christmas Island, whatever. It's something no one cares about. Except me. Ooh. But not really. Now, next up, the cataclysmic conclusion to the Vacation series, as well as my faith in humanity in Hollywood, Vacation 2015. Vacation 2015 follows Russ, the son of Clark. Boy, doesn't that sound like... They should have called it Vacation, Son of Clark. Ooh, that would have been cool. Russ has grown up, and he has a wife and 2 sons, one of which is the spawn of Satan himself. But we'll get to that. So Russ wants to wants to do the family vacation. He wants to go to Wally World. Usually he's gone to this lodge with his family, but he's worried his wife is getting bored of him. So this is not just to recapture his youth, it's to save his marriage and save his social status with the neighbors who visited him once. Ooh, wow. This is an epic movie even. It's beyond comedy. You get the picture. Within the first few minutes, when Russ's plane, he's a pilot, hits turbulence and he winds up in the crotch of some kid. It's a rated R movie. And this is proof why the rating is not the end-all be-all, because this is rated R, and it sucks major bum. It sucks more than anything has sucked in the world. Well, maybe not that much, but close. And like I said, the original Vacation knew to save its R moments for just the right moments. This movie's just a ride through raunch and sleaze. And none of it hits. The jokes are almost more predictable than European Vacation. They're less funny, and they're trying harder, I bet. Or at least it feels that way, because they're going for that R rating with all these ooh, blood, ooh, sex, ooh. And none of it hits. It was a slog. Now, I never quit a viewing because I think I should watch a movie all the way through. But this is one where I watched with my girlfriend and I was thinking, oh gosh, do we have to watch this? It was bad. One thing that... There's this stupid car in it where when they don't have a gag... Oh, well, they always don't have a gag. None of it's funny. But when they don't think they have a gag... they'll do, ooh, this car has a button. Ooh, the driver's seat swivels around for some reason. This would never happen. This is so far detached from the humor of Vacation. It started off as Clark Griswold is a devoted family man. Way too devoted, and he's an over-the-top character where if something crazy happens, it's from him. He instigates his problems. And even in European Vacation, he still instigated his problems. Now, when he punched that German and got the whole town wanting to kill him, which was way too silly, at least he still instigated his problems. It understood that as crap of a movie as European Vacation was. This one doesn't get that. The car exists as a joke machine. This thing would exist in this world, and people they meet on their trip are eccentric and over the top. It's not the jokes aren't the Griswolds are weird, it's that the world is weird. It completely does not understand the humor of Vacation. I hardly think it understands humor in general. I think it understands disgust more than humor, particularly in the little kid who terrorizes his I shouldn't say terrorize, he's actually a psycho. Attempted murder, really. But they think it's funny. And the moral is that he talks to the bigger brother talks to this love interest that tells him to stand up for himself. The love interest just disappears, so it's like, oh, whatever. But it's such a confusing, it's like, okay, well, I get standing up to yourself, but it comes across victim blaming because the little brother's just actually a psycho. The parents should send him in a ward, in a mental ward, or at least chain him to the basement where no one can ever see them. But I might be projecting what I wish they did with this movie. This movie was... There's only one good moment, which is when Russ meets Clark, and it gets a bit of that cynical edge. Just in one scene where Clark's like... Where Russ says, oh, it's not the journey, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And Clark says, the journey sucks. It's the destination that makes it worth it. You keep trucking, pretty much. And it's like, wow, that one scene got the cynical edge of Vacation. Can't say the same for the rest of it, though. This is actually, I told Janie and I think we both agreed, this is probably the worst. I said this is probably the worst movie that I'll see in 2025. I'm really glad I got it out of the way because the rest of 25 looks like sunshines and rainbows, starting with this movie. If I see a worse movie this year, then the planets aligned and the gods conspired to give me the worst day of my life. because I don't think Vacation 2015 can be topped. Not even, especially not even, by Caddyshack, which is a great movie. My girlfriend and I, we were on this Chevy Chase binge, and 80s comedy in general, and we watched Caddyshack. Caddyshack is about this teen Danny who tries to get a college scholarship by being a caddy, while he's in love with the judge's daughter, the judge for the scholarship who owns the golf course. Yeah, Caddyshack had a plot. Kinda could have fooled me. Well, no, the plot I described is more so the excuse to deliver its stars, which, boy, there are a lot of them. Namely, one of which is Bill Murray, who's playing a unique role. I expected his typical Murray role where he's, sarcastic, a little bit low-key, and self-centered. But no, he's playing a character, a varmint hunter, a southern varmint hunter. And my girlfriend and I joked, we love Murray, but we joked, wow, this is back when he had to act. It's not just playing the same character you're used to. And surprisingly, he doesn't interact too much with the rest of the cast. He's off hunting the gopher in the golf course for most of the movie. He's pretty much has his own plot. And Chevy Chase is there, and also Rodney Dangerfield, whom I know from Rover Dangerfield. It was a nice surprise, a relief seeing him in a better movie in this one. And it's funny because his character is really eccentric. I know people joke like the Simpsons jokes about his stand-up, where it's kind of ingrained into his character. You get it in Rover Dangerfield, and in the Simpsons jokes on it, where he's doing, oh, what, can you believe this? And then he says, who am I talking to? And he still does that in Caddyshack, but the thing is, his character is so eccentric, I just believe that he does this. And Dangerfield's probably my favorite in this movie. He is, almost everything that comes out of his mouth is funny, and it's just a joy to see him waltz into the golf course, into the, I forget what it's called, into the club, and pretty much make fun of all the old hoity-toities there. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. It's really plot light, but the sequences are so funny. Let alone that with that many comedic stars, what's not to love? In fact, it's like, it feels like they're competing for who's to be the funniest, who's to be the star, which makes sense with some of the egos like Chevy or Murray. But if they're all competing to be the funniest, well, they're all giving it their A game then, and that's part of why Caddyshack is so funny. I quite loved it. Next up, I watched Modern Problems. Modern Problems indeed, because it's about Chevy Chase, who is driving along one day and nuclear waste falls on him and he gets psychokinetic powers. Now in this movie, Chevy Chase is, one of his modern problems is that he stalks his girlfriend. It opens on the fact that he put a microphone tape recorder on his girlfriend's car or something. He pretty much stalked her. This is before he's even coated in nuclear waste. So right from the very beginning few minutes, he's a freak. And it is humorous to see him be a jerk pretty much with his psychokinetic powers. And that is funny. Especially since Chevy Chase has to make a Chevy face to do his powers, to convey him doing stuff. They do whoa, whoa, whoa. That was my attempt at a silly face where he'll move his eyebrows and stuff, and it's like, hey, Chevy making a face? That's worth a watch. Although the ending, a bit spoilers for the ending, Chevy's fine. He pretty much chases the girl. He doesn't change his ways. He's a stalker before he gets coated in nuclear waste. After he's doing these psychokinetic stuff, messing with people in order to get his girlfriend back with him. So he's still stalking and manipulative. And the girlfriend's like, doesn't care at all. She's like, oh, I love him. And it's weird. And at the end, he goes crazy, of course, and, you know, is pretty much spinning a human around in a circle above the dinner table. And it's like, okay, well, this is it. He's gone crazy. This is totally over the edge. What's his punishment? Nothing really. Lightning zaps his power away from him, so he's normal, and he still gets the girl. It's really weird. There's not a character arc to make him warrant being alive at the end. So I wish it could have just been poetic justice and killed him, but I feel like they were hesitant to kill Chevy, or maybe he didn't want to be killed, because it's a comedy. You can't have the main character die in a comedy, but yeah, the ending didn't really do it for me. Otherwise, it's a pretty humorous movie, even if it feels like it takes a bit to get to the point at first. But it was entertaining for what it was. Next up, we watched Spaceballs, Mel Brooks classic. Now, even though I like the movie, it's a good movie. In fact, I love some of its jokes. Its meta jokes are really genius. Its meta jokes provide the biggest laughs. And I think that's part of why the movie is so popular. I haven't seen Mel Brooks' other stuff, but my girlfriend informed me that this is the one most fans say is just alright. And I can see it, which might make you wonder why it's the most famous. Well, I kind of think two reasons. One, it's Star Wars, which you don't even have to see Star Wars to get the parody. Just being exposed to cultural osmosis, you get it. Here's a little secret, don't tell anyone. I've never seen Star Wars. I've never seen Star Wars in my life. I remember when I was a kid, my mom brought home from a garage sale 3 VHSs of the Star Wars trilogy, and she was like, oh, look, I got Star Wars. And I was like, oh, Star Wars? I haven't seen it, but I'm a kid and know it's shooting lasers, pew pew, spaceships. Oh, wow, and everyone loves it. Ooh, Star Wars, I'm so excited. And my mom asked, do you want to watch it? And I said, no. Eventually, like, she would ask, hey, do you want to watch Star Wars today? No. And to the point where it was like, are we ever gonna watch this? I'm like, oh yeah, maybe one day. But I didn't watch it, and turns out I never watched Star Wars. But I still got Spaceballs. So there's that. And also I think, particularly with the internet age, some of the jokes, like I said, are just genius and standalone. So I think virality helped it too. It's quotable and it's good. It's good, but I can see why Mel Brooks fans think it's probably just, you know, around an alright good. Next up, we watched Barnyard on my suggestion. Barnyard is about a cow named Otis who wants to live a partying lifestyle, but that's all gone when his dad dies to coyotes. His dad was pretty much the guardian of the barn, and now Otis is thrusted into leadership. I say that, but it's not necessarily the case. Although the barnyard patrons designate Otis as the leader, it's not really about being the leader per se, or at least he's not confronted with problems that require him to be the leader. Otis wants to party, and for the second act, it's mostly him. Like, one stint is he gets with his cow friends and hijack a car and gets on a police chase or whatever. And, you know, that's okay, yes, Otis would want to do that. He wants to maintain this partying lifestyle, but he has to be a leader. Except those scenes are kind of isolated away from responsibilities as a leader. And I know that's the point. Otis is trying to get away from it, but a story needs conflict. Otis is not confronted with having to be a leader, having to make these choices, or like there should be stuff where he's like, oh, okay, well, whatever, do this to the barn. And it almost like collapses something where he doesn't take it seriously and conflicts surmount because of it. But it doesn't really do that. In fact, I'd say that his arc is not even fulfilled by the climax. Before the arc, before the climax, he sees the coyotes chase a bunny, and he's talking to this girl, his love interest, and he leaves to try to stop them from killing the bunny. And I'd say, and this is before the climax, and his arc is pretty much done. He left chatting up girls to protect the barn. If he had to learn leadership, isn't this the point where he learns it? But if it's an arc, it should have been fulfilled at the climax. It's not a well-structured movie at all, even tonally. Like right after his dad dies, there's pretty much a skit where the farmer keeps seeing the animals party, and they keep knocking him out and trying to figure out what to do, and it doesn't balance the tones too well. It came off jarring. Structure is this movie's main issue. So if you were really considering on watching Barnyard, which you probably were, take that into consideration. I bet I impacted a lot of viewers there. Hey, well, the show is pretty funny though. I like that the show just ditched most of these plot lines just to be a really silly, wacky show. Oh, one thing I will give Barnyard, I love Otis is played by Kevin James. Of course, you need a star, but I was stunned how many talented voice actors were in this, like Cam Clark and Rob Paulson. I was like, wow, this is a pretty good cast. I was, that was a pleasant surprise. Next up, we watched Airplane, which is another brilliantly funny movie. It is, I'll say, most of its gags are on this plane. It has a story, which is funny, but a lot of it is centered around, this passenger's doing this and this passenger's doing this. A lot of it is individual skitty moments, but they're really funny, and I really liked it. It's hard to describe per se. Like I said, I'm not good at criticizing comedy, but this is a really funny, and part of that humor is in the simple premise, which will contrast with one of the later movies we saw, which is still good, even if it has a more fleshed out premise. Next up, we watched Hundreds of Beavers, which is about this partying man in 1800s or whatever time is, he's a drunkard. He's partying, and then he winds up destroying his cider farm, his cider machines and stuff, and he has to start from scratch. And motivated by this shopkeep's daughter, this shopkeep says, you need hundreds of beavers to marry my daughter. And so, he has to get beavers. This is like an RPG in a movie, and the movie almost knows it, because whenever he's at the shop, it goes into a video game menu with selecting items, and it's rewarding to see the main character build from just an idiot to actually a competent forager and hunter. It is a rewarding, like, well, seeing your character build up levels in an RPG. And I thought, and it's also in black and white, which I was worried about, but it understands the contrast that comes with black and white. It's not just a cheap filter over it. Like, they paint his eyebrows so that he looks more expressive. They're more defining. It understands its cinematography. It's not just a cheap imitation of old film. In fact, and it's also more of a cartoony movie. It's really silly, and especially by the climax, it has such a sharp, controlled, inspired use of like its visuals that are really like toony and stuff, and like the physics of like just how the dam works and like balancing on logs and stuff. Its finale is superb. It's great. Its finale is great. Now, after saying all that, you might... Oh yeah, also, not only seeing the character build up, little facets of his journey build up in ways you don't expect too. Not just him, but it comes together in a unifying, rewarding way. Now, that being said, you may be surprised that despite my compliments, I wasn't really crazy about this movie. I will say the climax was great, but the humor just wasn't for me. Some jokes didn't really do it for me, and it's around 2 hours long, and for a comedy, you gotta be making me laugh more often and more harder than just some chuckles here and there, which is what I was mostly doing throughout the movie. I'm probably in the minority who just thinks it's okay. Most people seem to be really crazy about it. It's an indie movie, but I can't say I don't see it because, well, you heard all my compliments. It has a lot going for it, but the comedy didn't hit me as hard as I would have hoped. And for a comedy movie, that's a big deal in the grand scheme of things for me. But you'll probably get more out of it maybe than I did. Like I said, I seem to be in the minority. Next up, we watched Top Secret, which is by the people behind Airplane. And it's after Airplane, and you can see the success of Airplane lead to this much grander adventure, which is a spy movie about getting... it's World War II, they fight Nazis. You get it. It's a movie you watch for the jokes. It's a spy movie. And, well, I should describe the humorous premise. This rock star from the West is brought into Germany to be their exposure to rock. This is them trying to expose their people to the culture of the rest of the world while still maintaining their regime. And on his journey, he gets mixed up in this rebellion. And that, so it's a funny premise, and there are some songs in this, and musical sequences, and especially some of them, they're so grand with moving sets. Some of them, there's a lot of like, it's much grander than Airplane, which is some funny people, often some funny characters sitting in passenger seats on the plane. This one is much more physical. It's much more over the top with much more going on in the set and action and story. It's a grander adventure of a story. And the jokes, there's some crazy fourth wall gags, like jokes on the medium that I'm like, wow, who would think of this? Top Secret was a hoot. I think I prefer the simplicity of Airplane, but Top Secret was really funny. Both are great watches if you're into comedy, which was the theme of this month for me. I usually don't go into watch. Usually don't watch comedies, but for some reason my girlfriend and I were on this kick. So, well, that explains what we watched. Why we watched most of what we watched this month. Reaching the end here, I watched a movie that I had watched on my own. In fact, let me pull this out here. Burst City by Sogo Ishii. Now, Burst City, I was motivated to watch this movie because I had watched another film of his, Crazy Family. And like Crazy Family, Burst City is very rhythmic. Sogo Ishii seems really big on music in his movies, to the point where it sometimes feels like you're watching a music video. The visuals and audio are just that tightly intertwined with rhythm and action. And Burst City had that. Burst City is about this dystopian future punk Japan. Think kind of like Warriors. Some people compare it to Mad Max. That's mainly because one of the gangs, there's some road racing, and one of the gangs wears metal face helmets, kind of Thunderdome-ish. Some people compare it to Mad Max, which maybe more the first one, a bit production-wise, but not too much. I recalled the Warriors more often. And I was like, wow, these gangs are crazy, and I was like, oh, the music, the integration of music. In fact, the opening is really neat because it's like this black and white film in the crowd of a rock concert, and it feels like the first act when you're exposed to the exposition of what this world is. It's immersive. It almost feels like a documentary. It has a really great opening, and I was into it. I was into the oddness for the first hour, and then I was like, oh, all right, well, that first hour was cool. What else you got? You're gonna tell a story? Not too much. The story is a little light. It's light on story. And even if I loved the energy, visuals, and music of the beginning, that's only the first hour. It's like you can't expect me to be into it all the way, like for all 2 hours. You have to have some substance to it. After the first hour, I was desensitized to it and wanting a bit more. I was a bit disappointed in Burst City, but if you're a fan of Japanese cinema, like I'm trying to get as many, I want to go through a Sogo Ishii phase. He's this weird auteurish filmmaker, and to give this how weird he is, he changes his name based on what era of filmmaking he deems himself in. Like now he goes by Gakuryu Ishii. Just seems like I'm just kind of attracted to that kind of like creator. I'm like, ooh, that sounds interesting. And I love Japanese cinema. So it was interesting. Even if I didn't fully appreciate it so much, even if I wasn't so into it. Lastly, I watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I watched a lot of John Hughes this month, and I wanted to end it in, well, I say I wanted to, my girlfriend was the one who came up with the idea to end it on Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Now, Ferris Bueller's Day Off is about this kid, Ferris Bueller. You know how Kevin McAllister is kind of this genius kid who can rig up traps in his home? Think kind of like that. Ferris Bueller is trying to get a day off from school, so he fakes an illness and rigs up recordings of him being sick in his home and fakes a sleeping thing in his bed. He's a clever kid. He's a clever teenager who's trying to get out. He's trying to get another day off in school. But the principal, Dean, is not having it because one more day off and he shouldn't graduate, according to the dean. And the sister's mad at him because she thinks, well, I couldn't get away with this. Why should he get a day off and not me? So, and that's that's the conflict. His friend is a bit meek, a bit cowardly, but he goes along with it. In terms of Ferris's plot, the main conflict derives from the stressed best friend. Otherwise, Ferris Bueller has a day off and it's pretty much a party for him. He doesn't really have much conflict, which makes this story really unique. The conflict is diverted in the other characters. And not to mention, I don't mind it too much because it's still funny. So I don't mind Ferris Bueller not having a conflict because one, conflict is diverted through other characters, and he's just funny. There's a reason this movie is a classic. And one thing that I like is, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but Ferris Bueller doesn't really have an arc. And that's what's so interesting about this movie, is that Ferris Bueller gets what he wants and he doesn't have to learn anything. It's just a day off from high school. In the grand scheme of things, who cares? And even though he doesn't learn something, he doesn't have an arc, they didn't want you to think Ferris Bueller was just a slacker like the dean proclaims. Because at one point, Ferris and his friend end up wrecking his friend's car. And Ferris is like, yo, dude, this is my fault. I'll take the heat from it. You don't have to endure this from your dad. And, the stressed friend wants to endure it because he's like, I've had enough of my dad. I want to stand up for myself and be, So he has a character arc. And Ferris, even though he doesn't have a character arc, he still has a good character moment here that really rounds out his character, where he's not just a slacker, he's a good guy. He's like, he knows when to take responsibility. He just knows, this is just a day off from school, who cares? And my girlfriend said something quite interesting that I'm surprised I didn't realize. She's a big Phineas and Ferb fan. I like it too. We watched quite a few episodes together, and it's surprising that I didn't think of this. She said that the sister reminds her of Candace, the sister in Phineas and Ferb. It's like, oh yeah, because the sister in Ferris Bueller does want to bust her brother. She thinks he's doing something bad, and she does want to bust him, but has to learn, hey, this is okay, really. That was a really... I'm really glad I watched it with her. I wouldn't have thought of that otherwise. Going back to Vacation, both this and Vacation are pretty similar, are similar in some ways. Clark Griswold doesn't go through an arc. He does the same thing. He's still as devoted to his family, still goes to crazy lengths in Vacation, but he gets his way by the end. Even if he goes through hell, he doesn't have to go through an arc. And it's like, hey, he's just a selfless man who wants to do the best he can for his family. He's not a bad guy. The crazy lengths he goes through are more derived from just the movie's humor, and it understands that he's really just an okay guy. It doesn't feel the need to punish him. And Ferris Bueller is like that, but it has a really lackadaisical philosophy. Like I said, it's just one day off. Who cares? Who's it hurting? Who is it hurting? And that, because of that, Ferris is pretty much has it easy for the movie. It's people around him who stress, and I liked that devotion to that philosophy. It didn't give the main character a conflict. It's just, hey, he's all right. He doesn't have to learn anything. He has it all figured out. So I like how in tune it was to its own philosophy. Ferris Bueller is, a really funny movie and a pretty interesting, uniquely structured movie. And the last movie I saw in January 2025. tell me if you want to see more of this. I might do more. I do want to get better at impromptu speaking like this, and I was considering doing a video on some of the video games I played in 2024, but that might be a bigger video, and like you probably realized by now, I ramble. I'll be working on my next big review project, even if it might take a while. My girlfriend is coming this month, so I will be enjoying some time with her. So, sorry if that stunts a bit of my progress in production. But, hey, stay tuned, and maybe I'll produce more of these, and, but either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, I hope you enjoy any of my videos, and I hope you take care. So, see ya.